UFC 115 right around the corner in Vancouver, and one of the stars on the card, and again, it's a guy that American fans just have not gotten to see the best of, and that is Cro Cop. And he's a really interesting guy because he doesn't like the media stuff, but he's a smart guy, and he has a sense of humor. What'd you make of the last couple of days with Cro Cop? Because he was kind of off the wall, Kevin.
Steve, I was amazed. I've covered Cro Cop a number of his fights, and the one thing that you can say about him is he's been miserable routinely with the media, just terrible. I mean, most of the time he doesn't show up. When he does show up, he just kind of stares there in space. And it started that way on Wednesday. He showed up at the UFC Open workout, and there was a large contingent of Canadian media there, as well as some of the regular MMA media that travels around. And, he was given 1- and 2-word answers and really was not into it. He was staring away, looking out. And then all of a sudden, a reporter for the Vancouver Sun, she asked him, said, "You're not very wild about this, are you?" And he said, "No, I don't like this." And then he proceeded to open up. And not only did he explain why he didn't like it, then he explained some of the concerns that he has and things that he thought affected him since he had come from Pride into the UFC. At the press conference yesterday, he was actually funny. And I said to him as he was getting up, I said, "You should do this more often because you're good at it." And he asked me if I liked it. And I said, "Yeah, I thought you were great." He said, "Well, I'd do it more if my English was better, but my English isn't good." I said, "Your English is perfect. You should do it more." And I would agree with that. I mean, I think that he has a lot to offer. And this side of Cro Cop that we saw is much different than what we've seen out of him for the time that he's been in the UFC. And I think this is a very a good side of Cro Cop because it's going to create a lot of new fans.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the English aspect because, some of us can get on guys like Cro Cop or Anderson Silva and talk about guys not, being a little more open with the media. But, it is a barrier. And I'm sure, if the roles were reversed, we wouldn't be real comfortable trying to be funny. And because things can get taken out of context if you're speaking whatever, Portuguese or Japanese or you name the language as your second language.
Right, I agree. And, myself being a print journalist, having words, I've always looked at this, you don't quote the guys in pidgin English, and you understand that they are not native English speakers. And so, you try to, fix the, you don't change the essence of what they said, but, you try to make it so that they don't look badly. And it's a very fine line to walk because you want to report what they said, but you don't want to be negative to them. So you have a little bit extra burden when you're dealing with a person who has English as a second language. And, just make things grammatically correct and put them in a way that, conveys what they really meant.
Mm-hmm. Glad to hear that from a guy from Pittsburgh because, to me, a lot of the origins of this, one of the worst cases ever was Roberto Clemente, where some of the Pittsburgh media, if you remember, kind of stuck it to him by translating, writing basically verbatim what he said, and he kind of looked like a moron, and that would scare me as an international athlete.
Yeah, I mean that's just not I hit the ball or what. I mean that right. You just don't do that. I mean to me that's disrespectful. And so I don't want to change what somebody says because that's journalistically unethical. But I want to fix I want to convey what they're trying to say. And sometimes if they don't have the language skills because they are speaking Croatian or, in George St. Pierre's case, French, and English is a second language, until they get to a point where English is as natural as their other language, then I think we owe them that. Okay, well, in fixing what Cro Cop was saying, maybe it doesn't need fixing. What did he answer when he was talking about the giant scratch on his head? Because I didn't know if he was joking. I didn't know what he was saying. He was just joking. Okay. He said 2 women came to his room. He said, "I'm okay. They're not." I think he was trying to make a joke that he didn't quite get everything out, but everybody laughed. I mean, it got a big guffaw. Obviously, that happened in sparring. I actually had seen him Wednesday after the workouts. I went to lunch by myself at a local pizza place, and Cro Cop and his team were in there. And then I think he looked like he was ready to actually go to a legitimate workout. And So I think, he was going from the lunch to a legitimate workout, and he probably got scratched during that, maybe a final sparring session. He did not specifically say what it was, but it was a fairly big, I took a picture and posted it, a fairly big scar or big scratch, but it looked like it was done, maybe with fingers when somebody was throwing a punch at him, and they must have been wearing MMA gloves.
Could it be a factor on fight night? And we should mention he's had bad luck now back-to-back cards because there was a little controversy with a potential cut before the card in Australia.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it didn't look like one of those things. The skin wasn't broken. It was more, like a reddish type thing that you get if, somebody gets their fingernail and, kind of runs it across your skin. And that's what I thought. I don't think it's one of those things that's going to open up for him. If it does, it covers a lot of ground on his forehead. It's going to cause him problems because the blood will go into his eyes if in fact that does happen.
How do you think he'll perform?
I like Pat Barry in the fight. I mean, and I like Pat Barry because I just think that, Pat's going to throw a lot of punches, a lot of kicks. He's hard at both. And when you're 35 years old, and, I haven't seen out of Cro Cop this energy and all that, I think it's going to be hard to take that for him. And, the prime Cro Cop obviously I think would deal very easily with Pat Barry, but at this stage, he's not the prime Cro Cop, and until we see that he gets back, kind of like Chuck Liddell, until we can see that he can get back to that level, I think we have to question. And I just think Pat Barry is such a hard kicker, such a hard puncher, and he doesn't have to worry so much in this case about getting submitted, being taken down and submitted. Cro Cop obviously could take him down, but that's certainly not Cro Cop's game.
This should be just a total firefight, right?
I mean, I can't see how it won't. Everybody's been talking that this going into the card might be the fight of the night, and I would have to say I agree with that. If you're going to handicap it, this would be the one. Two guys that are big punchers, big kickers. They don't like to go onto the ground, so I think you're going to see them just wailing away at each other, and it'll kind of be like battle survival of the fittest.